Hi again then guys, and welcome to of course another circuit tune for the 1.34 selection of cars, and this is a very highly requested circuit setup that I've had to do for the Supra, a car which of course we reviewed earlier on, like a couple of days ago, and a car which a lot of people have been having trouble with because of how drift happy it is, which is not always conducive to racing or good lap times. So to get straight into the tune, I've tuned this one for N300 in particular, because of course that's where it already is, and typically if you can take a performance car, especially like a sports coupe, into the lowest class it can perform in, it will generally be a little bit OP, at least to some degree, whereas if you try to make it take on like N500, N600 machines, you might struggle, because now you're talking like full-on super sports or supercar territory. So that's what I've done here, N300, and also it's just a good gauge against a number of other tunes that I've done, like the TVR Tuscan, the Porsche GT3, the Hyundai Genesis, some very, very good cars with good tunes on them. Now, as far as the weight, we've dropped that as low as it can go. You don't need level 5, because that doesn't allow you to drop it any further. Level 3 power is what I've done. Technically, you don't need to do anything, because it's just on 102%, and of course balance of performance can change those two anyway. Traction control, I've got turned off. Now some people might want it turned, for instance, on 1, just for that little bit of extra safety, but I would encourage you to try and drive without it, because you will become quicker. We've got sport softs, which might seem kind of crazy, given that it's already slippery. Racing softs would of course give you a ton more grip. But I've said it before, and for those who haven't used my tunes before, I'll say it briefly again. Using racing tyres is not a bad thing. If you want to, by all means go for it. But the point of me as a tuner using sports tyres is to show you guys what it can do without racing tyres. So with racing tyres, it's even better. Whereas if I built it to just use racing tyres and then you put sports tyres on it, it might become absolute trash. So that's the reason why I do that. As far as suspension, we've got the ride height 10mm higher than stock, so it's pretty low. You could go even lower if you want to, it's not going to hurt. As far as the frequency, we've got that on 2. Then as far as the anti-roll, 7 and 6 respectively. For the dampers, on the compression side, we've got 63, then 91 for the rebound. I do have a bit of camber on this one, surprise surprise for a tail-happy car, 1 degree on the front and the back. Neutral toe, downforce is not adjustable on this one. As far as the diff, I would recommend a very similar setup, if I recall correctly, to what I did with the TVR Tuscan, which, as I said before, I believe is this car's best main rival in the game at the moment. And of course the new TVR Griffith would be an even better rival, but you want the lowest, basically on all 3. Now, you can experiment, of course, if you want to try something else, but that's what I'd recommend trying to begin with anyway. Then as far as the transmission finally, of course this is optimised for N300, but as I say with all of my tunes, you can build it to a more powerful tune if you want to, by all means. But if you do, of course you'll need to have longer gears to allow it to achieve more speed. So you want the fully customised transmission. I would recommend an auto setting of 186 miles per hour. Of course you'll have to convert it if you're using kilometres. And then for the individual gears, 2750, 1950, 1.5, 1225, 1050, 925 and 825, with that final drive of 3.1. So that's it for the tune. As I said, you can rebuild it to N400, N500 if you want to, but to see what it can do in N300 with barely any more power than stock, let's take it out to our usual test track. And our usual test track is of course Dragon Trail. I've had some people ask, why do we keep on using this circuit? Again, I've said before, it's the same reason why Top Gear uses the same track. It gives you a good idea of how cars compare, whereas if you change the track every week, it's hard to keep track of how the cars compare to each other. So how does this one compare? Because I will say that as far as the handling goes, it's not that it's completely neutral now, it's not like an all-wheel drive car by any means, you can still get the tail out, but the difference is it's much more controlled, it's much more focused, and crucially it is less playful. It feels very similar to my tune for the TVR Tuscan, so if you like that one, chances are you'll probably like this as well. Now, speaking of that Tuscan, how does it compare? And even more importantly, how does it compare to what is still the fastest N300 car I've ever built for this track, the Porsche early 2000s GT3, the 996 shape? Well, it's not as quick as the Porsche, which isn't really surprising, but it's only 1 second off. It's literally 1 second slower than the Porsche. That will probably surprise quite a few people, given just how slippery this car usually is, compared to how OP those Porsches are considered to be. And to compare it to the TVR, it's almost 2 seconds quicker than the Tuscan. That is very impressive, and it's about 2 to 3 seconds quicker than my Hyundai Genesis in N300, which is also a very, very good car. So it speaks for itself. The lap time really does. The Supra may not feel the fastest thing out there, and technically it's not quite the fastest thing, but I've got to say, I'm very impressed by how this car's lap time turned out, so I would urge you to use this tune if you've been having trouble with the car, and I think you'll find it a lot more useful if you do. But of course, click here on screen to see all of my other tunes, including the Porsche and the TVR that I talked about, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.